Actually, I believe with parts of both statements. So first, I'm not sure if I fully agree with the narrative around the small school movement and what its outcomes were for our city. Because one of the things the small movement did was it really raised a lot of the costs across the district. And some people even believe that it played a role in us then being taken over by the state when we had a budget shortfall. And so there are a lot of different narratives on what the small school movement produced and what its outcomes were in our city. And even the latest grand jury report stated that we have too many schools in Oakland. And they specifically cited two reasons for us having too many schools: the strong small school movement and the proliferation of charter schools. And so it's something we need to look at, because it's great to have a small school movement, but if you can't afford it, we're leading down the wrong road again. So like I stated before, I really believe that the power should lie with the school site community in choosing their site leader, their principal. That is the part that I believe our community should be most empowered with, because then communities would be able to choose a site leader that's going to reflect the values that the community has and is going to push the program and the curriculum that the community is demanding. I think that's the way that it's supposed to flow. There are problems, though, when we start looking at giving complete authority to school sites. For example, we have things like, the teachers have the contract. We cannot give school sites authority to change the school calendar if we don't negotiate first with OEA over the teacher's contract. It's just, you can't do that. There's also different requirements for curriculum. And so, yes, we should have more freedom for school sites to tailor their curriculum and their program to what fits the community, but there are limits to that. And so what I would like to see instead of that is, like I said, schools should be able to choose their site leader and their principal. We also need to have a much deeper level of engagement with the school board and on a citywide basis. Too many of our decisions over the last 15 years since the state takeover have been made in isolation. So, for example, the school district this year just recently voted to give KIPP Charter School a 40-year lease on one of our public schools. Along with that decision was to move Lafayette out of the school and to have them join with West Oakland Middle School. But that decision was only made looking at those three school sites, without any concerns with how it's going to affect the greater neighborhood, how it's going to affect the feeder patterns, and how all our individual schools fit into a patchwork to make a complete education system. And so we really need to, I understand the lure of saying full autonomy for each site, but we need to be careful. We are in this together. We have a public education system. It needs to be collective. And unless we're gonna sit down, look at a city map and decide what makes best sense for our whole city, we're gonna repeat the same mistakes. That's why we have some issues in this neighborhood that they don't have above 580, because these decisions have been made school by school or neighborhood by neighborhood. We need a citywide decision. And lastly, with all of this, what we have right now is we have this perception in Oakland that to get a good education, you have to go to a school above 580. Then, in this neighborhood, a lot of people apply to a school above 580. The end result is schools in this neighborhood get even less resources because they have even less students. That is the cycle that we need to turn. We need to invest in this neighborhood, in every neighborhood, and come up with ways so families feel comfortable sending their children to their neighborhood public schools.
Our next question is from Danielle.
Good morning, Mike Hutchinson. I'm Danielle Mackey, Oakland parent too, and I'm a leader of United Family Independence. There are over 49,000 Oakland students in public schools, of which about 12,000 attend charter schools. OUSD has recently announced an initiative called Equity, which is meant to create a new culture of cooperation between the district and charter schools. As a result of this cooperation, new agreements can be created to address equity issues in a number of areas between the district and charter schools. Ultimately, this should strengthen public education across the city. Equity issues exist across districts and charter schools, and that addressing these issues head-on will ensure a higher quality education for more students. Mo believes that cooperation between district and charter schools is not simply best practice, but is necessary for a healthy Oakland. Everybody will have to and should make compromises on behalf of students. You have 4 minutes to answer this two-part question. First, do you support the equity pledge initiative? Why or why not? Second, do you believe that you will hold some responsibility towards charter school students? Why or why not? And how will this affect your decision if you were to become an OSU board member?
No, I don't support the equity pledge. For a lot of reasons. Reason number one is every other city besides Oakland doesn't call it an equity pledge. Every place else in this country where this idea is being pushed, it's called a charter compact. And it's another policy that's been heavily funded by the Bill Gates Foundation nationally. Now, personally, I was insulted when the name of this was changed to the equity pledge. I thought it was extremely disingenuous. And again, like I said before, I'm at all the school board meetings. So the way we actually got this is the school board approved a new equity policy. That you actually use the word equity how most of us would imagine it should be used. Talking about equity among different people in different communities. Somehow the superintendent used that as justification to come up with an equity pledge. Now, I don't know why we're using equity when we're talking about giving charter schools more access to our public education institutions. That's what the Charter Compact is. It is opening up our public school system to allow charter schools unlimited access to our enrollment, unlimited access to our facilities. All of these things across the board. Now, there is no way to compel charter schools to participate. In other cities that do have charter compacts, they have charter schools that decided not to participate. And we, or if I'm on the school board, me, as a school board member, would have no way to compel them to either join the charter compact or even to enforce the provisions of the charter compact. Again, this is an effort to turn over more to the charter schools. For example, one of the pillars of the equity pledge, the charter compact, is a common enrollment system. Now, it was big news in some of the local media over the last year. A common enrollment system, there's only one change really that the common enrollment system would have over the enrollment system we have now. And that would be, there would be one application in the city, which means if you turn in an application to send your child to a public school, you could be assigned to a charter school. A common enrollment system actually guarantees charter schools in the city a minimum level of enrollment, something they don't have right now. While all of this is happening, while supposedly our school district is negotiating a charter compact, the California Charter School Association has sued our school district. We are being sued over Prop 39 offers, which are offers where we allow charter schools to rent our facilities. So how are we supposed to negotiate with charter schools while they're suing us? To me, that it really shows bad faith on their part. And again, there's no way to compel them to follow along with whatever they agree to. Instead, I would do something totally opposite. Instead of focusing on the 28% of students who go to charter schools, I would focus on the 72% who still go to our public schools. I would really like to stem the tide of charter schools growing in our city because it's unsustainable, and there will always be children left behind because charter schools are not required to take all students. What we need to do is we need to start investing in our public schools and growing our public school system again. If this is a competition, our public schools are losing because our public school leaders are not engaging in the fight. We need to have a strong, thriving public school system, and turning over more to charter schools and negotiating more of our public institutions is not the answer.
The next question is from Cesar.
Cesar from Parents here. community organizer with Oakland, also an LCOP member, District 3. Board member, one of the most important jobs will be to evaluate the performance of the superintendent. We know that speaking directly about superintendent's performance review publicly will be a violation of confidentiality procedure for board members. So without speaking about the current superintendent, what actions will you take as a board member to ensure that the superintendent has a scope of work that is high impact, clear, and achievable? Follow the question. After you have taken those actions, what information would you need to know in order to understand whether a superintendent is being effective? You have 4 minutes.
So first, if I would have been elected to the school board in 2012, I would have never voted to hire our current superintendent. We need to have a superintendent, first off, who has experience, especially experience in Oakland. I think this pattern of looking for the solution outside of Oakland, again, is how we've gotten ourselves into trouble. I love that new people come to Oakland and talk about how unique it is and how diverse it is and how special it is, but then they don't value the people who actually made it that way. That's what I think we really need to turn our focus towards. And there was a time in Oakland where we did cultivate our own leadership. I think we really need to return to that. I also would not hire a superintendent who went through the Eli Road trainings, who was trained to run a school district on a business model, who has ties to many of the other superintendents who are destroying other big urban cities across the country, like Chicago, New Orleans, Los Angeles, New York. I can go down the list. There has been an effort, unfortunately, nationally, to really disrupt urban public education systems. And the people who trained our current superintendent and the city he comes from are heavily engaged in this also. So this is actually the 4th superintendent or state administrator that we've had in the last 15 years that's come through this training. I think we can kind of see the effects of where these 15 years have led us. And so our power relationships in the city, in my opinion, are kind of out of whack. The school board's job is to develop policy. The superintendent's job is to implement that policy. What we have now is we have a school board that have abdicated their responsibility. They allow the superintendent to dictate policy to them. That's why we run into these problems. And so we have a superintendent who unilaterally wrote the strategic plan. We haven't had that before. In past strategic...
Have your focus on like the more theoretical side of this rather than Wilson in particular.
Okay, no. Okay, so I think that's where I was going to, but cut me off if I don't. Our power relationship is often the city after the state administrator. So we need a school board that's going to dictate policy. Then we need a superintendent that's going to implement the policy that the school board is developing. And so one way we can tell if we have a successful superintendent is how well they are implementing the school board's policy. Another way that we can see how we're going to have a successful superintendent is stability. I would argue that if we have a superintendent who is changing their leadership, their inner circle, and changing our site administrators regularly, that we've lost continuity, and it really shows that, I think it shows a lack of effective leadership. The last thing that we need, more than anything else, is we need a superintendent who feels comfortable in Oakland, a superintendent who feels comfortable in our communities. I don't want a superintendent who feels compelled to have 24-hour security because he doesn't feel safe in our city. To me, that sends a bad sign when the leader of our schools drives to school in a tinted window SUV with 24-hour security. We need, for lack of a better way to say it, we need one of us in charge. We need to find a way to really cultivate our leadership, to plan for the future, and to not rely on people not from here to tell us what we need to do. I think we can really find a better way ourselves.
So, at the end of my, for the conclusion of my interview, we have just two minutes where you can use as you wish for closing statements and close out. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, thank you again for allowing me to be here today. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't address, at least for me, the elephant in the room. I realized in 2012 that Go endorsed the person I was running against, who is now the incumbent school board member, I would have done things very differently than she's done in these last 4 years. I also know in 2012 that GO raised a lot of money that was spent directly against me, including the GO PAC. So I understand what it's like for me to come here, but I'm very convinced in the policy solutions I would like to see happen. Like I said, I've been at every school board meeting for years. I grew up in this neighborhood. I've lived in District 5 my whole life. I'm a proud graduate of Oakland Public Schools. These schools I was one of the lucky ones. These schools got me to UC Berkeley. My younger brother graduated from Oakland Public Schools, went on to the Ivy Leagues, and now he's a successful lawyer. My mom was a teacher in these schools for 40 years. My family has invested blood, sweat, and tears in our public education system in Oakland for over 50 years. This is something that I care deeply, deeply about. And for me personally, I spent over 20 years working in schools. In a lot of ways, I would much rather go back to working with the kids in the schools. But I became very worried 5 years ago that if more people didn't do something, we wouldn't have public education left in Oakland, especially not the way we want to see. And so right now, we need to do something. To me, it's an emergency. We need to step up and do something right now to fix public education, to stem the tide. Then hopefully we can work on actually rebuilding our system and getting it where we need it to be. Because it's never been good enough, but I really feel like we're moving in the wrong direction instead of improving things. And so I want to see a city where we have schools where everybody in the city will want to walk to their neighborhood public school and educate their kids in their own neighborhood. That's when I know we'll have a successful city. Thank you.